What is going on? It is Alex coming back at you with another video, and today we are going to be breaking down CBS's brand new mock draft. If you are new, feel free to like, comment, subscribe. We're on the way to 10K, so it would be great for y'all to join me on that journey. Below my face is my board. Below that is the ways to get all the benefits of the show, including our two sponsors, Olu and UnderDog Fantasy. Feel free to check those out, and also links are in the description below. Let's get right into this. Usually it's David Edwards who does these mock drafts, but we have somebody new, and Mr. Chris Trapasso. So very excited to see how everything rolls out. And this is a brand new mock draft, came out 6 hours ago. As of right now, this is right after Barrett Carter just declared that he was returning. So I guess I shouldn't have said declared. That's kind of counterintuitive. But he said that he's going to go back to school to Clemson. Can't really blame him too much. I think that he could definitely use one more year of development because that guy has really high potential. And, I would not be pretty much rolling the dice on going third or second round to a team that I'd want to end up going to if I know I can get up higher. Let's go. So that's intriguing. I just read the title for the first time. This is a live reaction, and, it is what it is. So we get a Falcons trade. Interesting. Seems very similar to what I did this past week in my 3-round mock draft of trades. Feel free to check those videos out. I also did a 2-round no trade, as I do every single Monday. I do have finals this week, so give me some blessings there starting tomorrow and then over the next week. And then I graduate in just a little bit over a week. That's going to be certainly intriguing because then we're going to be focusing a lot more on the show rather than having school kind of being pulling at my coattails, so to speak. But the number one overall selection, we got Drake May, new quarterback on the block. Restudied a lot of these quarterbacks, actually, with my dad, who's a former DC and quarterback himself. He and I just watched through a bunch of quarterback tape, and to be honest, I just still wasn't blown away by Drake May. Primarily, we looked at the Clemson game, and there still is some major inconsistencies. Drake May has some of the most beautiful balls that you can throw. He really does kind of feel like Justin Herbert to me in that aspect, where I do believe he's going to play in the NFL better than he did in college, because you see if an offensive coordinator actually knows how to use Drake May properly, what he could be. It just really is a post-draft eval based on the coaching rather than just the pure talent, because I think it is a little bit more up in the air than what a lot of people think. I would highly doubt that, Drake May could be considered polished by any stretch of the imagination, but, I don't really think, if this is the situation that I'm in, I don't know if I'd want to go Drake May for the Bears. Personally, I'm taking a swing on the highest upside quarterback, and to me, that's Caleb Williams. Obviously, that's why I have my board below my face, so I don't have to describe my exact rankings every time I do a video. But Drake May, he's a good player. I just don't really believe it would be the right move for the Bears to go with him at number 1. Jaden Daniels is the number 2 overall selection, obviously going above Caleb Williams. I think that's the whole entire idea of this mock draft, is what happens if Caleb falls. I like the idea of Jaden to the Patriots. They've been drafting more athletic quarterbacks later on, so it's good to see, maybe if they actually got an actual quarterback, there's a good chance. So, Jaden Daniels, a really solid talent. He puts the ball in the right spot, great athlete. He's just a great overall talent, and it's good to see him ascend towards the end of his college career. Now, I just don't know how the Patriots are going to adapt to someone with so much more talent than what they normally have, but I'm all for it. I just wouldn't do it over Caleb. I would be fine with Caleb 1, Jaden Daniels 2. Let's put it that way. Marvin Harrison's the number 3 overall pick. Perfectly fine with this one. Obviously, he is just a super special talent that is very, very hard to pass on. Olu Fosu is going to be the Washington Commanders selection. They need tackle pretty damn desperately. I am not going to shame them for going and opting for one. Caleb Williams on the board. Even a big fan of Sam Howell like myself, I would probably go for Caleb, but it's totally understandable if they say, hey, Sam's our guy, Sam Howell's our guy. This is as good of a second selection as you can get. The Bears going Laiatu Latu. To be fair, this edge class is actually decreasing relatively rapidly with Princey Umamulan and Landon Jackson returning. Those are the day 2 guys. I do think that there might be a little bit more of an emphasis on edge rusher earlier on. Latu, I'm still not there with it, but we'll see what happens when the time comes. The Bears can definitely use another edge rusher in their repertoire. Caleb Williams ends up going to the Buccaneers. I love the landing spot for him. Obviously, would believe that he ends up. So the Jets traded back with the Buccaneers. There's no way if the Jets are sitting there and they see Caleb on the board, there's no way they don't select him. Also, I would highly doubt that the Giants would let him, slip to this spot and not move up for him. I don't really believe in the trade back idea. I'm curious to see what that trade compensation would have been. Of course, here I am, Mr. Do your own negotiating, but I'm just curious because Caleb Williams is a super special talent. There is a realistic world where some teams just naturally don't want to deal with the potential, non-CEO qualities of Caleb Williams. I don't know. Again, he's my number one overall player. I'm trying to play as devil's advocate here, but great move for Tampa. Malik Neighbors goes to the Giants. He's a really good talent, like a really good wide receiver. I would be opting for a tackle at this point. I know that sounds like I'm a Malik Neighbors hater. I'm not. I really think he's an amazing talent, and I just don't think this is the right system for him to thrive in. Out of respect for Malik Neighbors, don't think that he's the guy who I'd go with here. I'd go Brock Bowers and just stick him on the outside. I'd go Keon Coleman and stick him on the outside because I think that's more what would actually benefit this team. Malik Neighbors' deep threat ability and after the catch, we already seeing somebody in Jalen Hyatt who he doesn't have the same size profile, but he's not being utilized properly. So what is, out of respect for Malik Neighbors and his potential, why would we take him over somebody like Keon Coleman that could truly provide high upside value as that jump catch threat? You have to look at who's going to perform best in this system, not just who's the best player. And to be fair, I still think Keon Coleman's a better player than Malik, but they play totally different roles. And this team doesn't really need the Malik Neighbors role. That's my little argument there, because I know a lot of people love Malik Neighbors to New York, and I'm just one of those people where I like to push back on that idea. Joe Alt is as good of a pick as you could ever want to the Titans. Going to be full support of that one. Brock Bowers going to the Saints. Honestly, should have probably been one of the teams that traded up for Caleb Williams. But, if you're not going to go QB, this is as good of a pick as you can get. It really is. I think tight end is relatively mediocre on this team. I'm sorry if the battle of mid in your tight end room makes you feel comfortable, but you can always get an upgrade there. Brock Bowers would be a certain one, but of course, I'd be opting for quarterback. J.C. Latham to the New York Jets. So if they got a ton of draft capital and still got J.C. Latham, it's understandable. I still think if Caleb Williams is there, it's hard to not let Aaron Rodgers mentor Caleb Williams for a year. But I do understand, you need to protect your quarterback, and that might be number one priority on your list. Raiders go Kool-Aid McKinstry. Personally, if you don't go after a quarterback, another situation where if you don't go after a quarterback, I'm perfectly fine with it. I think quarterback should be the primary objective of this team to fill, and I like Bo Nix. I'm perfectly fine with him. I don't know why there's this massive wave of hatred, and I just don't think most people who watch Bo Nix really watch Bo Nix, or you watch maybe a quarter of Bo Nix, but don't actually watch the whole game because he genuinely can get out of rhythm, but he really does bring a ton to the table that some of these other quarterbacks don't always do. There's a lot of these quarterbacks in this class that cannot catch the hot streak that Bo Nix can. And it's kind of sad that he gets the rep that he does. But Kool-Aid McKinstry is really damn solid here for the Raiders. Jerzon Newton, great idea for the Chargers. They still need to figure out that defensive interior, and Johnny Newton is definitely going to be a valued addition. Romo Dunn going to the Bills. He's about the same worth as A.D. Mitchell to me. And, I'm honestly quite surprised to not see him ranked as like top 5 because everybody just loves Romo Dunn. And I restudied him. And it's like, yeah, there's some aspects in his game that have improved, but people try to act like Romo Dunn is the second coming. He really is not. He's a really solid wide receiver, but he pretty much is A.D. Mitchell with some extra weight on him. It's a good player. I think the Bills could use him. I think it'd be a very good impact. But let's not try to fool ourselves here. There's a lot of really good receivers in this class, and Romo Dunn is not heads above the rest. Toi Vaga to the Broncos. Intriguing. I do like the idea of continuing to bolster the line. This team, you can never go wrong by getting a better offensive line. And Fuaga might need a year or two to develop. His athleticism works really well with a moving pocket, and just overall, I think it might benefit this team quite a bit to snag an offensive tackle, especially Garrett Bowles and his comments before. So I'm not actually against this one as much as maybe some people would think. I don't really believe that the right tackle spot's where you need to develop. I would actually have Tulise be trained as a left tackle in the system because of the fact that, you just paid a ton of money for the right tackle spot with McGlinchey. So, have Tulise train for a year. Obviously, I'm a little bit biased. He's my number 7 player, and go from there. But there are better positions. You do have some higher upside wide receivers on the board, and that's probably where I would lean first. But this is, I want to be able to explore some other options, and I think this is actually a really good one. Of course, again, I'm a little bit biased. He's a top 10 player for me. Cam Kitchens goes to the Seahawks. I don't know if he actually ends up coming out, but given the fact that we saw James Williams come out, there's a good chance he could too. I don't think safety is as big of a need as, people might suggest, given the fact that he was taken here at 15. So I don't think it's a big issue. Also, Julian Love is there. Forgot about his ass being a third safety there in that room. I do think Quandre could be cut after this year. I doubt Jamal Adams would, just for emotional value, and I think his contract is more tough to get out of. So I would look, probably the way that I would process this pick would be look at defensive interior. Tavondre Sweat's a big ask. It's a big ask. I don't really believe Leonard Williams will be signable, but at the end of the day, you can always stretch people's and restructure people's contracts to where you could afford anything. But really, quarterback is one. Bo Nix is on the board. Michael Penix is on the board. Just take one. Just take one. Your top 15 pick. This team is built to be 14-3, and they're just underachieving. So, it's certainly worth it in my eyes. Rams go Chop Robinson. If Aaron Donald stays, this is great. He's an incredible talent who just needs a little bit more coaching on consistency, but the high upside is certainly there. Keon Coleman to the Bengals is, well, as you expect, unbelievable value. Big fan of it myself. Jared Verse to the Cardinals. I've made that pick myself. If he is here, you can't go wrong with it. I'd be scared shitless of facing him and BJ Ojolari in the same game at the same time. Ridiculous player. Should not be here at 18, but he naturally falls in my mock drafts too. Really damn good player. Amari Mims is next. Another one of those players who I believe will end up returning to school because, rather than being picked at pick 19, maybe he could be picked at 1 or 2 or 3. Next year, there's not that many incredible players. You got some guys who could compete in that top 3, but I think Maurice Mims could be head and shoulders above the majority of the talent. And that's not trying to shame Harold Perkins or anything, because I think he's a god. Or, you can even talk about, Shadur Sanders, but not Shadur's part of it, but you can also talk about, why am I forgetting Travis Hunter's name? So, you could get Travis Hunter in there as well, but Amarius Mims is special. He's a special talent, and I think he needs one more year to prove it, and I think he might opt for that. But we'll see what happens. Obviously, if the Falcons can end off the first 2 rounds with Amarius Mims and Justin Fields, definitely not going to be ashamed of it. I do like Caleb McGarry overall, especially for the fact that I just don't think that you need to spend this pick on him, but Amarius Mims is going to end up being a superstar. I'm not going to blame you if you want to rest him for a year until he's fully healthy and potentially trade Caleb McGarry to a team that is in need of a right tackle. Cooper DeJean is next. So I make this pick myself all the time. I'm going to be down for it. Injuries, I think, cut his season short. That's the only RIP there, and that's the only reason why he's probably available at 20. Bo Nix to the Vikings, big fan of this one. Again, just don't really know why people don't like Bo Nix. He makes some poor decisions here and there, and he gets out of rhythm. But when you see this guy in rhythm and he knows how to bounce back and get back into rhythm, there's not many guys who can compete. He's a good leader. He's rebounded from an awful start to his career, and he's ended up making a lot out of it. He is 8 points total, 4 in each game, away from being undefeated in a completely different narrative. Sounds a little bit like the Vikings, kind of reversed, but still. These are one-score games they lost to Washington. All of a sudden, he sucks because he's losing these games. Ooh. No, Bo Nix is a he's a great quarterback for what college is looking for. And I think in the NFL, he could be very solid too. Great pickup by the Vikings. Leonard Taylor goes at pick number 22. He had a pretty big down year. I would not be surprised to see him return to school. I think he should return to school because there's some really good talents in this class. Same thing with next class, but Leonard Taylor has the potential to be a top 5 pick if he ends up being consistently the player we see on his high-end reps. And that's not an overstatement. He really dominates games, and he could be on that, not Aaron Donald tier, but I mean, hell, Jalen Carter potentially could be better, but like right below that Jalen Carter tier. And that's not an overstatement. He really does have that potential. It just doesn't apply it every single game or every single rep for that matter. Kareem King is next for the Steelers. Y'all know how much I love this pick. Like, actually one of my favorite players in the class. Also has instant connection with JPJ. Also a huge need. Overall, fully sold. Braylon Trice to the Texans. I do think they should go after another edge rusher. You can never have too many, to be fair. I would prefer to go after Dallas Turner just for that instant connection with Will Anderson. But, this guy, Braylon Trice, is, my number 5 player instead of my number 4. And he has a much different body type than Dallas Turner. And if you're looking for someone who could be an elite run defender as well, actually, Dallas Turner does a really good job at that. But, Braylon Trice has a little bit more size to him. It's going to be a little bit more difficult to take him out of the run game. So I wouldn't be fully against this one. I just would deep down want that instant connection. Jordan Morgan is next for the Kansas City Chiefs. I don't think going after an offensive tackle is a bad idea. Jordan Morgan could end up being a very valuable asset to the Chiefs. I'm glad to see a position that, I don't really factor in too often. Just seeing him and Wanya Morris potentially being bookend tackles for the future is something I could totally see happening. It's cool to explore a different realm. Of course, I'd be looking at wide receiver at this point, but, Jordan Morgan is a really interesting and something I'm very much open to pick at 25. Graham Barton going to the Jaguars. I think this is a very bulky pick, high upside athlete, and could play center or guard. Pretty much plug and play wherever you want him to go. Cowboys going Tyler Nubin. I need to study a little bit more on the Cowboys safety situation coming up, but one of the positions I really wouldn't target is safety in the first round. I would be definitely still looking at the left tackle range. Of course, we did see Jordan Morgan leave, but Kingsley Suamataia would be a guy who I'd want on my roster rather than Tyler Nubin. Of course, the centers are still available, but it is a little bit early. Graham Barton's the only guy who gets the excuse because he can play tackle or guard as well. Then you got Nate Wiggins here to the Detroit Lions. A very solid corner, smart kid. I just don't think he handles physicality that well. And at his frame, I don't blame him. So, he's not going to be on that same tier as a Devon Witherspoon, where Devon is 180 pounds, but he's also 5'11", 6 foot. And he's just an absolute wrecking ball. Nate Wiggins is not like that. He's a very smart corner. He understands the field and processes very well, but he is far from foolproof. Definitely would be. He's my 6th corner at the moment, and he's still top 40. I just really like the receiver class, or the corner class. Speaking of the receiver class, Xavier Legette ends up going to the Niners. I'd be scared shitless to see 6'3", 227 South Carolina receiver pairing up with Deebo Samuel. And, of course, Ayuk, but I'm mentioning Samuel because they both came from South Carolina. This would be ridiculously overpowered. I would be, genuinely scared for the NFL to see what would happen. So, naturally, I'll just say go after the right tackle because I don't want to see a future where Xavier Legette becomes a god weapon on a cheap contract for the Niners. Let the NFL breathe, Niners. Especially the NFC, let them breathe. You got Dallas Turner going here to the Ravens. At this point, the value is incredible. Not going to shame it. He probably should go earlier, but you can't knock it. We got Edgerrin Cooper here going to the Dolphins in a thinning linebacker class, even though technically we got somebody who I thought would return in Danny Stutzman. Edgerrin Cooper statistically has been the best, and you can't really shame it too much. I'd prefer to go after someone with a more of a Mike build, but again, Edgerrin Cooper has been super well-rounded, very solid athlete as well. I think that he should be a little bit of a later pick. I'm glad that y'all ended up signing Austin Jackson, but I would still probably go after Kingsley Suamataia, especially if you can get him to rest for a year and then fill in case of injuries, because that seems to happen quite a bit. That would be the wisest move. And then we end off with Jonah Ellis. So my number 30 player in the class, going here at pick 32. He doesn't fit the exact build that would work with the Philadelphia Eagles edge rushing system. Like where they're lacking right now is those bigger edge rushers. But I really do like the shout out for Ellis. He's a great player who doesn't get any form of credit. I don't even give him enough respect. But, he has brothers who are in the NFL. I thought Jaden Ellis was actually just released or waived by the Eagles, so that'd be kind of funny if that is the case. But, obviously he has multiple brothers in the NFL, all linebackers. He's the edge rusher of the trio, so to speak. Really high upside, really high motor, just too small for the Eagles, but I do love the fact that we're at least factoring in some new players who don't get a lot of credit. Honestly, for a CBS mock draft, this is much better than what I've been seeing with Josh Edwards recently, and I'm glad to get a nice breath of fresh air. Of course, there are picks that I would totally change, but ultimately, these are some guys who we haven't been able to see a lot of. Some of these guys probably will return, but ultimately, this is something that's new. It's novel, it's fun, it's good to see. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. See you on the far side. Peace.